we go. Hey, Dan and Kat, we are going live. Who do you want to do a shout out to?
Yeah.
I want to shout out our co-facilitator at SOA, Isabel Rizzo in Chicago.
And I want to shout out Gordon White in New Zealand, a chaos magician who started our whole journey.
Isabel and Gordon, here we go. Guys, here we are again. I love our guests today, Dan and Kat Eckhart, our celebrity occultists obsessed with using magical means to transform your reality in accordance with your will. They help individuals find out who they really are by going beyond the social programming, upbringing, and expectations that you think make up your personality. They also give you the tools you need to bring reality in and break it into little pieces and reconstruct yourself through your own magical power. Dan and Kat, I am amazed and happy and so excited to talk to you guys.
Well, thanks so
Glad
much.
to be here.
So
Yeah.
I am really I'm thrilled to be here with you. There's so many
Great.
things I want to talk about. The first thing I want to get up and into everyone's vision and thinking is the word occult.
Yes.
Okay, because everyone goes like it's a scary, scary word. What does
Mhm.
occult mean? So let's talk about that just to break the ice.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great place to start. What does it mean to be occult? What is occulted?
Yes.
Well, occult means hidden. I think it's coined in like the 1600s, and it specifically meant things having to do with astrology or these like occult kind of spiritual techniques of looking at the world.
But many things can be occulted, not just our spiritual journeys through like esoteric philosophy or hermeticism or witchcraft. The occult can also be things that are generally, if not actively suppressed, at least a little bit suppressed by
Okay.
just the dominant strains of culture. So maybe that would be something like energy healing, or maybe that would be something like talking with spirits, or
Okay.
a form of paganism or panpsychism, these kinds of things that exist and people feel very strongly about, but not many people talk about.
Right. Now, most people, at least in the U.S., they grow up, and if they're in any sort of religion, that's usually some sort of Christian religion. There might be some Muslims, Hindus, things like this, but they don't really see those as being a cult.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, you guys, I think, started out along that path and switched. So, what made you switch from, we're going to call it traditional religion, I guess, to
Mm-hmm.
occultism?
Yeah.
Well, yes, you're correct. We grew up Christian, and then in college we converted to Catholicism.
Yes. And I guess the distinction there is we grew up evangelical Christian and then converted to Catholicism or Catholic Christianity.
Catholicism is Christian.
Okay.
Yeah. And we were really seeking something with a greater depth, tradition, and orthodoxy.
Mm-hmm.
Because in orthodoxy, there is ritual and there is often mysticism. And we
Yes.
were really seeking that.
Yeah. Our journey towards mysticism was one of, in a like Protestant Christian framework, things are they can feel sometimes very small. They can feel very hemmed in. They can feel very closed off. We kind of have to take a historical look here at like what was happening with Protestantism and Catholicism. And to make a long story short, the Protestants had some reforms that were, I think, valid and useful, but there was also a sense of maybe throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And so the mysticism, the esotericism, the globalism, the real felt connection with spirits was tossed out as being a little too weird, a little too strange, and we just want to get back to the basics.
Gotcha.
Thinking of Protestantism like a minimalism of Christianity. And so our journey towards esotericism and our journey towards mysticism was finding that spiritual feeling within a kind of Christian tradition, which was what we were comfortable with. And then there was the merge ultimately when we found the spirituality component that felt vibrant and alive, we realized that actually could be decoupled even from just a broad strokes Christianity and was maybe a little bit bigger and a little bit weirder than all of those traditions.
Now, one of the things that you guys do is you teach people how to use how to get out of what they think is their normal selves and
Yeah.
into their true selves, their real selves, right? And you do that. You've got a school that you teach that through. We're going to talk about that. But what is it that people are stuck in that you help them get out of?
Yeah.
Well, it's often limiting beliefs about ourselves.
Mhm.
So, one of the first things we do when we're helping people through this journey is to have them take a look at the story they've told themselves about their own life.
Mhm.
And then once they kind of map that out and have that written down just for themselves, not to share with anyone else, we kind of ask them, okay, what points could you be more generous with yourself? As if, your grandmother was talking about you. How could you be more kind to yourself and understanding about these so-called mistakes you've made, these failings that you have and you've internalized? A lot of people we talk to have internalized things like, harmful thoughts like they're stupid or they can't do anything or they're always failing. And we need to challenge these thoughts because it's not true.
Yeah.
It's not true. Now, someone who's listening might go, well, can I get those things out of my head going through, either a therapist or through my
Mhm.
normal church or through, a coach or something like this? What do you
Yeah.
guys do that's different than that?
Yeah.
And why would they come to you as opposed to someone else?
So magic. Oh, go ahead.
First of all, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. We're not the only path towards healing, and we never want to stop people from healing in whatever way they can. Some people are just doing this on their own.
Mhm. Sometimes magic is a slow journey. Sometimes the occult is a personal journey. But we look
It
towards
is.
occultism, I think, as a frame shift. So, in a larger context, what magic, what ritual, what the occult offers is a pathway, sometimes with other practitioners, but a pathway that allows for reframing the way we think about reality itself. And it's really hard to change our opinions about reality, right? Like
Yes.
reality is I think Albert Einstein said, reality is a persistent illusion. And it is very persistent. So what magic as a technology does so well is it gives us these tools that kind of bypass the conscious mind, that bypass this sense of this is reality. I see the table in front of me, the table is there. I see my debt is there. I see my toxic relationships, they are there, and they follow me everywhere. Magic gives us these ritual elements, these components, and sometimes that's like ceremonial magic, like waving a wand and wearing a crown and standing in a circle of lit candles. Or sometimes that's more like chaos magic or eclectic witchcraft, and we're just drawing little sigils and using lighting a candle. But that ritual action lets us bypass the conscious mind, what Jung calls the sensor. And it lets us bypass the sensor and get those little thoughts into the subconscious if you're using that framework.
So I'm sitting here, I'm like on the edge of my seat, not even a virtual seat, like in my real seat. And I'm listening, I'm going like, okay, what do I have to do first? What's the very first thing that you do?
Mm-hmm. So everyone's point of entry can be a little bit different. It depends on what beliefs you're bringing to the table.
Oh, yeah. And we work with people's beliefs. We never try to initially change like whatever spiritual background you're coming from, whatever paradigms you have about the world. We don't initially say, no, we're not working with that.
Yeah.
We have to change that right away. We really want to get a sense of where you are.
Mm-hmm. And a good example of this is people's relationship with spirits. One of the things we talk about a lot is the idea of the seance. The seance is a ritual act where we sit and communicate with spirits. If we go to someone's house and this is their first seance and they are reaching out, let's say, and this has happened to us, so I'll use it as an example. Let's say that they are a Catholic family. And so Mary is on the wall and they have crucifixes and saints. We're going to call upon saints to facilitate that spiritual interaction. So maybe we'll use,
They're saints.
maybe we'll use Saint Cyprian or Saint Michael to act as a go-between to bring other spirits forward. But we're not going to do that if we're not working with someone who has that tradition. And in the same way that if we went to go and do a seance for a group of Catholics, that we would not bring out Baphomet and be like, here's the devil and he's going to help us.
Okay.
That's the beautiful thing about occultism and magic is magic's been here for millennia.
So broad.
It's so broad. There are grimoires written by popes. There are trad witch manuals written by initiated witch cults. There are very technical manuals like Liber Chaos written by Phil Hine, which is a chaos magic that uses like materialism, like this is all quanta and this is all very understood mathematics and it all happens in your head.
There's so many resources.
Exactly.
So what do people, I'm listening to you, and you've said something that I haven't heard from anyone else before, and I'm going to ask the question, tell me if I'm right or wrong. Does one have to give up their current beliefs in their world, their Christianity, their Hinduism, anything else, in order to either believe in or practice occultism?
No. And that's the
You
exciting
have to give
thing.
up
It will change.
anything.
It will
Mhm.
shift. Like there's the great example that I love to work with is a historical one. And again, keeping this in the realm of Christianity for the moment, because in the US especially, most viewers are at least nominally associated with Christianity in some
Right.
form. But historically, like we're talking Middle Ages period up until like the 1800s, there's this idea of folk magic or folk craft, folk occult belief. And what you'll see is people like medicine healers, grannies, or this idea of like the hedge witch, these communities of essentially magically operant folks who will work with the devil, as an extreme example, on Saturday, and then go to church on Sunday and take
Yes.
mass and say, I am still very
There's
much
no
Christian.
conflict there.
There's no conflict.
Explain that,
idea
because
here-
I'm listening to people right now in their heads going like, oh no, there's a conflict. You can't work with the
Oh,
devil,
yeah.
you can't work with this, and you can't work with those people. Go ahead and explain that, because
So
that's out
yeah,
there.
The Appalachian tradition.
yeah. So the idea here is essentially that when we talk about a belief system like Christianity, so we'll say I come from a Pennsylvania Dutch background, so folk magic again. The devil is this spirit that God put on earth, right? God cast the devil out of heaven and sent the devil to earth. Well, if the devil rules over earth, if that's where the devil's domain is, then I guess I'll go and work with the devil if I want something here on earth, right? But the devil is still subjugated to God. And you see this even mirrored in some of like the biblical texts. Like sometimes the devil's an opponent of God, but sometimes God calls the devil up and says like, hey, what do you think of my creation? And the devil
Right.
says, oh, well, it's okay, but maybe you should change a few things. And then God does. So there's these elements in our tradition that sometimes we turn a blind eye to because they don't fit the narrative or paradigm that we are told they should. We'll find this throughout many different faiths. We work with some individuals, we're not from the Islamic tradition, but we work with some individuals who see mysticism in their own faith and find mysticism within the text, within the Quran. And yet maybe their parents or their local community leader looks down on that idea of mysticism because it doesn't fit the dogma. Yet the tradition is bigger than the dogma, right? Like the spirituality far surpasses what one person in your local church, synagogue, temple says is dogma, is the rules.
Right. Okay, so you guys, people will come to you, and initially, when they come to you, what are they looking for?
Ooh. So I think initially,
Knowledge.
when people come to us, it's this idea of, well, I know there's something bigger. I know there's something weirder, but I'm just overwhelmed by the entry point.
Yeah.
Can I get an experience? Like, is there an experience that will show me I'm not insane and this is not all just bunk? And then is there a way that I can ease my toes into this? Is there a way that I can like just try a little bit before I'm overcome?
Well, because a lot of people are frightened, and it is very new when you're beginning, and it can be quite frightening. But
It can be quite challenging.
yes, But, we act as mentors, we act as guides, and we have done a lot of research and we've talked to a lot of people. So we bring that knowledge into every session with someone.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what is there that people might be afraid of? So I guess when you start, you're teaching them certain things. What are the first things that they learn?
Yeah. So the first concept,
magical thing
the
to
first,
work with the plant.
yeah, the first magical thing is to find yourself in a larger cosmos.
Yeah.
Is to recognize that, and that's a very easy step for people to take, because most of the time when someone's coming to the idea of maybe magic is real, maybe the occult is a pathway to greater self-knowledge and greater control over my life, but also that idea of control we should bookmark and come back to.
Let's bookmark magic too, because I think
Yeah.
when most people think of magic, they think Harry Potter and throwing a wand and making something happen.
Yeah.
I
So
wish.
let's jump into that. I mean, and we'll come back to the main point. Magic, there's two really good definitions. One, Dion Fortune, who is a magician and occultist in the 20th century. She defined magic as the science and art of causing reality to conform with your will. And the idea here is that this is partially science because it's observable and hopefully repeatable.
Okay.
As a magician, as an occultist, keep detailed notes. Does your ritual work? If not, why didn't it work? How are you feeling? How did the results arrive? Magic, good occult magic should be repeatable. But also it's an art. It's not a materialist science. It's not going to sit down and we're not going to measure the atoms of the manifestation. We're not going to weigh it. We're not going to take its dimensions. So there is an element of artistic play here. How do we create? A good example of this, I think, is in seance, communicating with spirits. Some people have very strong connections through oracle cards, through channeling. Some people, it literally is an art. It's a sitting down and automatic writing or doing channeled artwork. So the expression might be different for each individual person. The other definition of magic that I really like is one that causes us to experience the world in a new way. So a ritual set of actions that causes us to experience the world in a new way and consequentially causes us to act in a different way.
And the world to reflect that.
Yes. So the first thing really is exploring those concepts. Like, if we begin to do things differently, how do things change? Is the world bigger? I think the easiest way to do that for us has been through seance, through this idea of communicating with spirits. Because as soon as spirits start talking to you, oh, that's a game changer, right? Like, the world's alive. My ancestors are alive. There are things that still
accessible.
is here to teach me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
At what point do people, like, I've never experienced a seance, when we were little kids, everyone said, let's go do a seance, and everyone just, turns out the lights and plays on the table and all this kind of stuff. When you are doing a seance and you're talking with people, do you see the actual person, or do you just feel the person? And do the people in the room feel the person that they're trying to ask questions of? Explain seance in your terms.
Yeah.
Yes, everyone senses in a different way. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. But seance we view as like a ritual with the intention of connecting with the spirit world or spirit in general. So it could also be connecting with higher self or angels or things like that. But we've held a lot of seances, and we've had a few people who have seen like more shadowy outlines, things like that. Nothing scary, but mostly people are feeling it. They're hearing things. They're smelling things at times. And for Dan and I, we do smell and hear, and I see images in my mind.
Yeah. For me, it's more auditory. It sounds like someone's actually talking. And this is something I was fortunate to be a part of a study rather briefly with the University of Maryland. They were studying clairaudience or hearing speech in mediumship. So I got to participate in that, which was a lot of fun and kind of bridge the gap between this like mystic, like embodied felt experience and then like science, like MRIs and double blind studies and like what's going on in your brain when you hear these sounds.
What did the science say when you when you were hearing things?
Yeah, so unfortunately, they never tell me because I'm part of the study, so I won't know until results are published or until it's quite finished. But we can speak to what is found within previous studies on mediumship, and there are studies.
Yeah.
I always like to push back, and I would recommend anyone read Mitch Horowitz for this information. But I always like to push back on this idea that psi phenomena, mediumship, precognition, psychic ability is somehow unscientific, because there is a great deal of academic research from verifiable, accredited universities that have produced information that is incredibly compelling, that psi does happen. There was actually just an article published in Time yesterday about the US military and their interest in this as a repeatable phenomena, and their interest in the research that they found showed some element of precognition amongst their operators, their soldiers, their participants. So if the defense agency takes this seriously, maybe we should too. So within that, though, everyone does experience it differently. As Kat said, sometimes smelling perfume is a very common thing, the kind of smell sense or the sensation of the body. And go ahead.
Well, I mean, I love how we've already gotten off on tangents. It's just too much fun to talk about this.
Yeah, it is. It's amazingly fun to talk about. And I want to reel it back in a little bit, because I want people who are interested in learning this to be able to reach out to you two and connect with you.
Yeah.
What's the best way for them to be able to do that? Would that be through your website?
Yeah. Right now, the Eckharts.com is our best location.
Yeah, and at the bottom of our page, we have a little form for you to contact, and that's probably the best way to have a conversation.
Yes.
Right. So, and then you've also got your Instagram that people can meet with you there.
Mm-hmm. And I will say we may be migrating away from Instagram. So you will be able to, if you sign up for our mailing list on our website or you reach out to us there, we will add you to whatever our next platform is. Yes. I'm thinking we might end up doing long form blog content, a podcast, something that's just, something that's just a little less distracting, a little less manipulative, right? Like we love social media. That's beautiful. It's brought people together, but also, it's gotten really hard to read a book since we've all been on Instagram. So
it's like MTV back in the day when everything flash, 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 flash. And it's like, now you watch a commercial, it's like, come on, let's move it.
Yeah.
True.
Okay. So I definitely want people to be able to check you out. We're going to end this right now, and I'm going to keep talking to you guys because you're amazing. And I'm just loving what we are doing, learning, and being and enjoying. So you guys check out the Eckharts on their website, and I will talk to you guys in the future.